Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Soul Seekers podcast, where we believe that hunting has the power to transform lives through primal adventure, as we share our mission of mentorship is conservation. To learn more about everything we do, check out our show on Carbon TV or go to soulseekersnation.com. Freedom on, everybody, and stay soulful. This podcast is also proudly brought to you by onX Hunt. When I first got into hunting, I kept hearing all about public land and different access and how to find different locations to hunt. I was like, well, how are people even identifying all this stuff? Well, sure enough, I came across the number one hunting GPS app, and that is onX Hunt. If you guys want to get better at hunting and go deeper into your scouting, onX Hunt is the number one GPS app for that. Join the millions of hunters who trust onX Hunt to find more game, discover new access, and hunt smarter. It was a game changer for me, and I know it's going to be a game changer for you if you've never used it. If you have used it, you know the power that it holds. Guys, I really hope you enjoy this episode. If you want to know more about onX, go to onxmaps.com/hunt and check out their app. Be blessed, freedom on, and stay soulful. All right, guys, if you're in the market for a new hunting rifle this coming year, look no further than a Kelbly's rifle. I've been rocking their Koda rifle for the last couple seasons, and I've had great success with it. It's an amazing shooter, and every time I put one of their rifles in somebody's hands, they're like, oh, I got to get one of these. Kelbly's holds over 92 world and national records that are either broken or set on one of their actions or rifles. So they really set a higher level of accuracy. If you want to know more about Kelbly's rifles, go to kelbly.com. That's KELBLY.com. Tell them Johnny Mac sent you with Soul Seekers, and go enjoy shooting that much more in this coming hunting season. Be blessed, everybody. Go check out Kelbly Rifles. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Soul Seekers podcast. I'm your host, Johnny Mac, and today I am joined by a really awesome human being and somebody who I got to meet at Dallas Safari Club convention here in, the month of January, and then got to follow up and hang out at SHOT Show together and all sorts of stuff. Well, we're joined by the owner of Horizon Firearms, Derrick Ratliff, and he is, along with his group of cronies, I'm going to say, brothers, over at Horizon Firearms, are the ones who actually created and came out with the 22 Creedmoor, which is going to be the main topic of what we're diving into tonight. This is an Instagram Live podcast as well, so anyone who is on Instagram Live and has questions that wants to dive in there, feel free to drop your comments and questions. We'll get to them as much as possible. And we're going to get this party started. So, Derrick, brother, thanks for joining us for an episode.
Absolutely, man. I appreciate having me. This is the first time I've done a lot of radio stuff, done a lot of podcasts. This is my first Instagram podcast. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah. I realized, when you're going on different time zones, and I used to live in the state of Washington, but I want to, my reach, I want it coast to coast. I want to connect. I was like, man, how do people really start getting connected with me? I was like, I'm going to start doing podcasts via Instagram Live, record it, and
that's cool.
Yeah,
that's really cool. And so far, the software has been a lot better than some of the stuff we've used. So I'll give you that.
Ain't that the truth? It feels like Google Meet always crashes, or all that stuff. Zoom. So, brother, what town are you based out of again?
So we're in Bryan, Texas. So we're down south, but I grew up not too far from you. So, you're in Weatherford there. If you take 51 and run north until you hit 114, you'll run right through my parents' place. So I didn't grow up too far from you.
Really?
You're too far from where you are now. Now I grew up a long way from where you're from, right?
Yeah, so. Definitely. So for all the people who are going to be tuning into this live and want to know a lot about you and Horizon Firearms and then eventually what led to the 22 Creedmoor. Yeah. Give a little history on yourself. And, used to work in the archery world, right?
Yeah, exactly, man. I feel like I'm a long step from that now, but yeah. So I grew up, like I said, North Texas, loved hunting and fishing and that kind of stuff. And started shooting a bow, really the first person in my family around 5th grade. And then fast forward, went to school at A&M down here in College Station and actually shot competitive archery, which is how I ended up at Bowtech. And so I spent a couple of years out in Oregon, so close to your neck of the woods, playing with archery equipment. And then we ended up moving back to Texas. Man, the weather just rocked me. I had to get out of the rain. And so we get back to Texas, and then I was doing some different things, and I conned my wife into doing outdoor television with me. So we started doing outdoor TV, which is really interesting. And so we started doing outdoor TV, and people started asking about the rifles that we were using. And man, one thing led to another. And next thing I know, my brother and I were sitting down, and more or less, we decided, like in archery, the hard thing was you were making products that was out. It was out of date, like really within a year, right?
Right.
I mean, that kind of wears on you as like a products guy and a design guy. You're like, man, I made the coolest thing ever, and then it's super cool. And then 2 months later, everybody's like, yeah, it's the worst thing. Give me something new. And so,
right.
We sat down, and on the rifle side, we wanted to build, legacy pieces, like real custom stuff, and knowing that hopefully that our guns would go places that we couldn't go, and that they'd be handed down long after we're gone. And so that kind of led on into the custom rifle world. And from there, talk about 22 Creedmoor. In 2014, I saw David Stroud jump on here, and David's customer number one for us. Great guy, really involved in the predator world. And we were kind of messing around with trying to get a fast, low recoil predator round that hit a little harder and really bucked the wind better than 22-50. And we messed around with a couple different calibers, and that was really in the world of when the 6.5 had finally sort of hooked on. Everybody kind of finally had understood that it was going to be around. And man, we started hammering on the 22 Creedmoor and seeing the benefits there. And fast forward 10 years, and in January we got a big deal with Hornady done on a 2-year exclusive, got it SAAMI approved, and man, went about 1,000-1,200% growth on the rifles we're doing, and it's been a whirlwind ever since.
Oh man, well, I definitely have a ton of questions that we're going to be getting to here, but I want to digress real quick. Go back to Oregon, Bowtech.
Yeah.
They're a guy who makes phenomenal custom knives and has been on the podcast. Rob McKibben used to shoot for Bowtech, and Niche Custom Knives is what he goes by on Instagram. Are you familiar with him?
The name sounds familiar. Is he based out of Oregon?
Baker City is where he lives.
Oh, there you go. Huh. Yeah, I don't. The name doesn't sound super familiar, but I mean that area is awesome, man. I went back out there this year, and after living there for several years and not taking a blacktail, I went out with Jody Smith and on the coast and shot a smoker of a blacktail this year. Finally, I checked out. I got a lot of mounts in here, but that's one that has haunted me forever. So we shot like about a 130, 135, 5x5 with eye guards, man. I was stoked.
And that's that picture I actually used for socials where you're
exactly.
Yes. I was like, dude, what is that Texas boy doing out west with a blacktail?
Yeah, I tell you, that has haunted me so long. I really think, and I've hunted a lot of places around the country and around the world, and Oregon is underrated, man. Underrated.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. So, look at that. Varminer Magazine says Rob makes incredible knives. See, there you go. You're going to have you have to check that out. So one of the things going back before we even, you're talking about you hunting all over the place, down in Texas, which I got into hunting. I was a high school football coach. I coached basketball. I coached track, lacrosse. I played college football. I was always doing sports. So when I finally took that leap into hunting, time was limited. For me, it was, I am a Second Amendment believer, like first and foremost, bought an AR, bought a pistol, that's what I was doing. I was like, well, I guess I have a hunting rifle in the state of Washington. I had an AR, shooting 5.56, 223. But my big game journey didn't start until a couple years later when I learned what public land was. And first animal I ever killed was a black bear. Because it opened 2 weeks before football season started, and so I could dedicate time to it and all that. Another story, another podcast. However, with that being said, is predator hunting has always captivated me. Dude, feeling like you can trick Mother Nature and be
yeah.
or whatever. I give it a shot. So just truly captivating. But what's your history in hunting? What you say you've hunted a few different locations.
It's really interesting. So I grew up on a farm and ranch, right? And so my dad trapped and predator hunted some. When it came to whitetail and stuff, but not a lot. And really, for me, a couple things really got me into it. One, back in the VHS tapes days, right?
Mm-hmm.
I remember begging my parents to take me to Academy, or we'd go to Cabela's or Bass Pro and
Right.
get to buy monster bucks, man, or really the biggest one, Tom Miranda. Tom Miranda shooting caribou with the bow put a huge impression on me at a young age. And then coupled with that, on the predator side, that was like really the hunting that I saw my dad and myself do. And so Dad would take us spotlighting, and we had one of the original Burnham Brothers cassette, when Murray Burnham and the guys were really doing it. And I remember got really into it, and my dad actually took me to Marble Falls, and we got to meet Murray Burnham in his house. If any of you guys, familiar with the old Burnham Brothers. And I remember walking in that guy's house, and he opened the garage, and dude, there were cages with bobcats and coyotes and cats and all this stuff, where they were like really recording real animals on cassette tapes.
Uh-huh.
And there's nothing like calling in a coyote, and you, like I said, you felt like you've accomplished something, but at the same time you feel like they're coming in looking for you or looking through you, and it's just a different experience. Same reason I like turkey hasn't really got me. I haven't signed off on that box yet, but same reason I love elk and really love waterfowl, man. It's just a different game when you're speaking their language.
Yes. Yeah, totally. Totally. I have never killed a turkey in the springtime. That's something that I'm planning on doing this year. It's like,
I've only ever done about maybe two. It's just, I don't know, something different.
right. If I got to hunt as much as I wanted to hunt, my wife would be very upset with me. So we mitigate that as,
There you go.
we pick and choose. So, dude, that's pretty cool background into how you got into hunting, like captivated you and all that. When you started to dive down this road of like, I want something more than what's out there, and you started messing with cartridges and doing wildcats. I mean, I feel like either you're very brave or you just have some sort of background where it's like, I don't know how do you go about that?
It's kind of a weird deal. We with Horizon, if you look at our products, we've got some pretty wild fluting, and we were doing some different paint jobs and different things. We call it countercultural, right? And so a lot of it, what we like to do is find areas where people say you can't do that, and then try and figure out a way to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, fluting is a great example of that for us. Or we started IOTA in our own stock company, and the cartridge deal. We had done a coyote hunt out in Wyoming, and I've done actually the Weatherford one there, where 22-250, you don't make the greatest shot and they spin around and run off. We had lost, we were late to weigh in one time for not making a great hit, and missing the weigh in, lost about $4,000 on the deal. And we came back and said, man, I want to hit them with something a little harder that has a better wind drift. And the wind thing was interesting because, like, growing up in Texas, we shot barrels out of a lot of 22-250s, and was plenty, right? We weren't shooting that far. But when I started hunting in Wyoming a lot, and I've got some good friends who may actually be listening here, out in Wyoming, the wind is something different. And when I went out there with those guys, we were using go lights in the back of a truck at night with range finding binoculars and spotting coyotes that were holding up at 300-400 yards. Guys were dialing turrets and shooting coyotes at night. And I started thinking, okay, the game is not, can I know what yardage it is and dial to it? The game is really wind, right? And so with a 22 Creedmoor, you're compared to a 220 Swift, you're going to have about 10 inches less of wind drift at 500 yards, right? And so, I had I can't remember who told me this. It was a buddy of mine or some hunt or something. A guy told me that the real trick with a predator is you're trying to hit a 2-liter bottle, turn sideways at an unknown distance. It's always changing. And so it's all about, trying to minimize your margin of error. And that's what high BC fast bullets will do for you, is that, you just cut the wind down, a tremendous amount compared to a 55 or even a 40 grain bullet.
Right. That makes sense. So you guys ended up wildcatting, playing with this. How many years? You said 2014?
It's been 10, man. It took 10 years. And we actually had Hornady down at the ranch, and we were doing a podcast with Ryan, who developed their ELDX ammo. And on the podcast, it hit me. I didn't realize it. He said, "You understand that 6 years ago, I sent you 250 of the ELDX bullets that just now got released, right?"
Yep.
So I don't think people realize wildcatting is not that difficult, right? It's some special soups, some reamers, trying to figure out where the safety zones are and what the gun can take and if it actually does what you hoped it would do. The bigger deal is getting a round approved by SAAMI and getting someone like a Hornady to back that, believe in that, make factory ammo that works in good barrels and bad barrels and ARs and bolt guns. Like that whole process, it's a real challenge, man. It takes a lot to do that.
Yeah, I can only imagine. Then hearing what I heard already from Seth and you, like it's quite a journey. So
Yeah.
So you ended up settling on the name 22 Creedmoor, and
Yeah.
that came from the 6.5 Creedmoor
6.5.
just neck down to a
Yep.
22.
And the reason we did that, I mean, like, a lot of people, we looked at it, a lot of Wildcat cartridges. There's several that don't stick around if the name is not right, if it doesn't make sense, right? So, like, and different people release these calibers in a different kind of way. People don't realize, like, the 6.5 Grendel really was a Alexander Arms, caliber, right? You got the 7LRM from Gunworks, but what it takes to take those off is a whole nother world. And the Creedmoor family, the 6.5, I think Seth and them had told me like that they made more 6.5 cartridges than any other caliber ever at this point, right? It's something stupid. I mean, like I forgot how many rounds he said they were doing a day. I probably can't even repeat it if I did know exactly, but it's dumb, right?
Yeah.
And so that Creedmoor family of cases, we wanted to do that because it made sense with the 6 and the 6.5, and actually, selfishly, we hoped, and it worked, that they would buy off on it faster with so much bought into the Creedmoor name.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, and then when did these longer BC bullets really start kicking off? Like what, 3 years ago, 4 years ago?
Yeah, I mean, we've been playing, like I said, the '80s. Trying to think back,
I
the
guess the time's
'80.
flying past me. It's probably been
Oh, I
longer than
know.
that.
Well, we started just shooting 75s and then 77s. And then, I remember, and like I said, David is listening on here. David was there the day that I got the very, very first 88 grain bullets. We had the first 88 grain 22 bullets that Hornady ever produced out of R&D. And David came by the shop and we gave him some. He left, loaded some, and then that evening shot a coyote at 5:30. Right. And so, we were working with the high BC bullets, and then that would have been, like I said, almost 7 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's just the interesting thing, like with the 22 Creedmoor now at the factory rounds, we've got the ELDX and the M's both an 80 grain, which is the only caliber that Hornady produces that their match and their X are the exact same grain weight.
And I was talking to Seth over there at Hornady, and he was saying it doesn't matter. Like you can replace it ELDM, ELDX, interchange them in the chamber.
Yep.
Your gun's going to shoot the exact same. It's just a matter of what animal or distance you're shooting at and determines what bullet. Do you remember what he says on that? Like what?
Yeah,
bullet?
and we proved it. Like there's a podcast or a video. If you go to Backfire TV, Jim's got a little video that we did with him at 600, where we literally were swapping back and forth and shooting a gong at 600. Basically, and I remember the conversation we had with like Jason Hornady. He's like, "Are you sure that's how y'all want to do it?" And my thought the whole time was exactly what you said: is we shoot a lot of whitetail, but then we're going to go shoot coyotes, right? And not that you can't shoot coyotes with the X's, what we've seen with them, or that you can't shoot deer with the M's. Although some people frown on the match grade deer, we've done it a lot. But kind of what happens is inside of 300, both bullets perform virtually identical. Terminal performance wise, I could put two deer beside you, you'd never be able to tell. Outside of 300, the X bullet just performs better on larger game at distance. And that's really the big difference.
Man, fascinating. So where does this journey go between creating the 22 Creedmoor, but then also Horizon Firearms? Was this a joint venture of like, well, we need a gun to shoot it, so we might as well build our own,
Well,
or how to?
I mean, we were really doing the guns first, and we were building all different kinds of calibers. And again, like I said, selfishly, I built one for myself, built one for David here on the podcast, built one for my brother, and then as Predator, and I think Jeff, you said Jeff's on here, he's been shooting one for quite a while, and as some of the competition Predator guys, especially out West Texas, where the real big money in some of these competitions started looking for a slight advantage. I mean, you see so many people now, like we sponsor the West Texas Big Bobcats. Go look at how many of those teams that are winning are shooting 22 Creedmoors, and I think you'd be surprised. It's just every little bit of an advantage, and so really what happened was really Horizon first, and then we just became known as the 22 Creedmoor people. And selfishly, like I said, my boy, I can tell you, my oldest is 11.
Yep.
And so we started him shooting that 22 Creedmoor at 4 years old. And at 5, he took his first whitetail buck with it. And I remember I've got that film on my phone, and I remember thinking, this could be a legitimate gun for low recoil for women and kids. This is not just a Predator round. And so it kind of set us off on a quest almost to prove that, right? So if you see a lot of our marketing stuff not around really anymore around Predator hunting with it, it's around mid-sized game hunting with it. I mean, I went to mule deer, we talked blacktail, antelope. I mean, so it's just it's a really good, we always talk the best long range caliber. I know somebody talked about here on long range calibers. And the way I look at that is you want a bullet that's going 3,000 feet a second at a BC of 5 or better. And if you can't get a BC at 5 and you have to get a lower BC, you need more velocity, right? That's kind of like I always talk about this. I've said this a million times. It's kind of 2 levers for long range.
Yeah.
And, with that 22 Creedmoor, I mean, sure, you're running a BC of 485 at 3,300, right? It's right in the groove of where you need to be for long range shooting.
Man, I didn't even know of 22 Creedmoor until I ran into you at DSC that day, and I'm like, hey, I need to know more about this. Like, let's start chatting, because my oldest boy, he's 9 years old, and when I got into hunting, so 2017 is when I killed my very first animal. My very first big game animal was a black bear. So as soon as that happened, I was like, I also became a father, and I'm like, okay, well, now I'm going to start, teaching my kids how to hunt. And I started thinking about calibers and what do I want to put in their hands after a 22 long rifle and different things. And that was about the time 300 Blackout was starting to become popular. And it's like, okay, well, if I have a suppressor and, we run like a Ruger Ranch rifle, a 16-inch barrel, shooting some subsonics, there's some pretty good ammo out there for subsonic black or 300 Blackout. I was like, this could be my kid's first deer gun. And it turns out he actually did last year.
Nice.
And shot a little spike buck at, I think is 109 yards or something like that.
Nice.
Which is great. The issue is that anything beyond that distance, like you're really starting to get into, all right, I know I could make a shot with my drop or if I dial or whatever, but is my child going to be able to make a shot when it counts? And so when I was hearing about the low recoil of the 22 Creedmoor and talking and hearing about how it's, kid friendly, but it's still enough grainage behind in that bullet, I was like, this is interesting, so I can't wait until I get an opportunity to shoot one of these and have my kids shoot one.
With a Blackout, man, you've almost got to have a CDS turret for every 10 yards.
Yep. Here's like ridiculous. Probably the cheapest scope I ever bought was like a Leaper's scope off of Amazon. It's like the early days of me actually getting into, shooting and all this. It's a mil dot. So mil dot in the center, up above, a long line. Well, I sighted it in at 100 yards on the crosshairs. Anything 50 yards and up, or 50 yards and under, I hold a mil dot above, and anything 150 to 100, the mil dot below, and it's actually pretty accurate, but not accurate enough that I want to trust my young kids shooting animals with.
Yeah.
So that's pretty fascinating. So you said your boy shot it at 5 years old, shot his first deer.
Yep.
Is he shooting out of a tripod or is he off of a
bipod? So what we did,
how is that working for him?
Yes, the way we set that up, and it's been a game changer. So Jeff, actually hooked us up with the guys at Recon. And we started using that Recon carbon tripod and, bolting an archer rail onto the bottom of the rifles. And man, we do that more and more and more. It's just an easy way to get them steady. And he can get on it when he was that small. He could get on his knees behind the gun and get some clearance. And now anymore, we set up in the deer stand like that. Like if we're in a box blind, it's pretty much on a tripod, and we use short enough barrels. That 18-inch barrel and a short suppressor. Gun's pretty much inside the blind, right? You can spin it around and make sure you're getting window clearance. But other than that, makes it easy too. And then going on if you're calling on a predator stand, you got more use of your hands and can kind of move around a little bit. So, for him, that's kind of been the setup or really, and then outside of that, just prone on most of the stuff for kids. I just prone and I always carry a triangle sandbag or a little wedge bag, and that just makes it super, super easy.
I like that. Well, let's dive into a couple questions that we've had pop up so far in this episode. I think the first one might have been aimed at me when I was talking about ARs, but we'll ask you also, Derrick, what's the furthest shot you've done with the AR?
With an AR?
Yeah.
Can I be totally honest with you?
Yeah. You shoot bolt guns.
Dude, I shoot bolt guns. I have one AR. And I think it's a Daniel Defense. Shoot, I don't even know. I have shot half a mag through it, sighting it in. And so I think I've probably shot maybe in my lifetime 10 rounds, maybe 15 through an AR.
We'll forgive you on that.
So 100 yards, 100 yards.
There you go. Mine, I couldn't even tell you. I mean, I've shot over 350. I'm not sure when or what I was doing, but I was dinking around. Okay,
so bolt gun's a different story.
So bolt gun's different story. So someone asked earlier, and this might tie into what your knowledge is on long range shooting, but you kind of talked about a little bit. Best overall long range caliber, and then they also said brand, but I would imagine that you're going to be.
I mean, I'm kind of biased on the brands. I mean, it's hard, right? The answer is it depends on what you're going to do with it, right? Like if you're staying mule deer and down, I mean, I'm selfish on the 22 Creedmoor, right? Like I'll tell you what's in my closet, right? I could build anything, and I have 2 switch barrel guns, a 6.5 Creedmoor competition, because a lot of times the 22 you can't, it's too fast for a lot of the competition. So I have a 6.5 Creed barrel and a 22 Creed barrel, and on the big side I have a 6.5 PRC and a 7x6.5 PRC. Before they came out with the 7 PRC, I was wildcatting that in a short action. And man, in terms of best caliber, it's like I said earlier, look for a BC of 5 and a speed of 3,000. And I think right now, if you're talking mule deer and up, man, that 7 PRC is hard to beat. It doesn't beat you up. The ballistics are really, really good. I mean, I shot a 28 Nosler for a while, and I think the 7 the recoil is so different that I think that it makes that gun a very usable backpack, gun.
Yeah, a Western big game rifle to really reach out there and touch something. I like that. Okay, so Pew Pew Tony says, have you found any complaints on the Hornady 80 grain match ammo? We have 4 Horizon 22 Creeds. None of them liked it.
Yeah, so I'm telling you a couple things. So yes-ish. So give us a call if you would on our customer service, 979-229-4664. Let's figure out what lot number you have on those. We did make there was a change between the first lot and the second lot, where we went back and looked at our Texas ammo projectiles and the power loads that were in the Texas ammo, and got with Hornady and made some tweaks on the second batch. So it depends on which ones you've got. If you've got the newest lot number stuff, you shouldn't be seeing that. On the first lot, we saw some guns love it. Some guns be a little more finicky with it. But give us a call at customer service, and if we need to do some swapping based on what lot you've got, that's not a big deal. I would ask on the flip side to make sure if you're getting good groups with the X, then like I said, be sure and call us so we can figure that out. But it depends on the gun. I've seen some single holes with the first lot and some be a little more finicky with it. But the new stuff I have shot. I mean, I've shot probably with the new lot, oh God, I don't know, man, 25 or 30 guns in the last 2 weeks, just making sure all that's dead nuts.
Right. So Pew Pew Tony ended up saying, "Oh yeah, the ELDX is amazing, but the match is awful." Was wondering if it was a bad batch. So
it could be the rifles he's got to be a little more finicky with the original lot. And like I said, just give the customer service group a call. They know which lot's what, and we can work through that with you.
Interesting. Okay, so someone said high BC bullets for hunting became a thing from the advent of good rangefinders that were affordable. Yeah, when people could start ranging things out at further distances, they're like, "Hey, I bet you I could shoot that."
Well, and it was interesting, man. Like I've shot some long range animals. Like my farthest hunt, or furthest shot on an animal was at like 1,017, right? And what I learned in a lot of that is I really think if you're good between 500 and 700, like real good, that's where I think, to me, that's where I start being like, man, if it's over 700, like I'll just get closer, but if we're in a canyon to canyon deal and here's this mule deer and whatever, like I think that if you've got those high BC boys, like he's talking, and a good rangefinder, I mean, dude, you can hammer them in 5 to 7.
Yeah. Okay, so I know that, like, for example, I have my own shirt on, right? Soul Seekers.
Yeah,
because
I know. I need one of those.
I do.
We need to do some swapping.
Definitely. We'll be in contact after this podcast for sure. What I was going to say is this idea of, I come from the state of Washington originally. It has a minimum caliber restriction for big game animals. It has to be 0.24 or larger. You have states like Texas where it's like it's the open, it's the Wild West. You can shoot what you want. I think Idaho doesn't have a caliber restriction. There's a lot of states that don't have it. So when you're going out west for a Western big game hunt, are you grabbing the 22 Creedmoor? Like, is that going to be your go-to?
I mean, it's seriously, it's either that or my 6.5 PRC, or like I said, or that 7x6.5. But a lot of it is we've done a lot of research in the front end, and maybe something we could put out there. But where we try and watch those states, and I've got a spreadsheet so that we know, kind of where we can go.
Oh, we got a little.
But if it's legal.
We had our first technical difficulty. There was a little freeze.
Oh, there you go.
There we go. Okay, so you were saying you're putting together a list, or you could do a better job.
Yeah, so I've got a list together. Yeah, I've got a list together. We could probably make it pretty, but I try and keep up with which states are legal for what on the 22. And regardless, if it's legal, we're taking the 22 Creedmoor. I mean, I'm so comfortable with that round. I mean, like I said, we shot that blacktail at 510. And I shot a mule deer. Well, I shot my mule deer was closer this year, but it was only like 250 yards. And then we had I want to say she was 14 or 15-year-old girl that was with us on that hunt, and she shot her mule deer at like 370. And so, yeah, I mean, if it's legal, I'm taking the 22 Creed.
Interesting. Okay, so what really blows me away right there is anyone who's on this podcast or IG Live that has never hunted blacktails. The fact that you got a 500-yard shot on a blacktail, like, where were you? Like,
Dude, well, that was the craziest thing. We were hunting one big clear cut closer to the ocean, and there's some different guys, different areas, and they've been seeing some deer rutting in this sort of clear cut, more, I guess, I don't know, like further-ish inland, like it wasn't right on the water kind of thing. And so we kind of came up to this clear cut, sure shooting. There was like doe, and I never really, living there, I never really saw it like that. It's a fresh clear cut, and there's a doe out there, a young buck, and this buck. And man, they postured up and did the whole thing. And I know Kat, and she's probably listening. I felt terrible for her, but she was filming for me. It got down, I looked back, and I was like, hey, you on there? Smoke this thing. And I'm like, it's the coolest scene because the young buck tried to get the buck of a shot. And I looked back and it's like, did you get it? And she's like, oh, yeah, I got it. And she had double punch record. So I'm like, oh.
Dang.
And my trigger cam didn't work. I had a brand new trigger cam. I hadn't got it. It needs to be simpler. If trigger cam's out there listening, make me just a simple on-off record button. But anyway, we went over there, and that young buck stayed with them as we packed out. Like the guy like took the whole deer out, and the 3x3 followed us. It was nuts, man. They were like in big time in the rut.
Wow, that's wild. That's wild. So cool to hear. One of the things that I wanted to ask you about is this 80 grain bullet that you guys are pushing.
Mhm.
Is it fur friendly? It seems like it wouldn't be at those speeds. Are you just blowing giant holes out?
I mean, dude, fur friendly is it's an interesting interesting comment, right? It's hard because the answer is sometimes, right? Like that ELDX juiced up. Sometimes you can get it to go through if you don't hit a shoulder square on,
Hmm.
man. But it's not. If you're a trapper and trying to sell, it's not the way to do it. You know, the craziest thing people ask me, what's the best way to do fur friendly 22 Creedmoor? And I think for me, the most fur friendly, I shot some 80.5 grain burger bullets for a while, really, really fast. And probably, I mean, I know faster than what SAAMI would like you to
Uh-huh.
do. But what we found is if we would shoot them with that, that it almost went through the coyote or the bobcat and then opened up. So it like penciled through.
Mm.
And it appeared to be fur friendly, but we watched some video that we had taken of a bobcat, and it was like you could almost see the bullet opening after it left. Um, but outside of that, I mean, anything from shooter marble to football size holes.
Yeah. Dude, it's hard to say that your gun can go shoot medium-sized game and then have it still be fur friendly. I totally get that.
Yeah.
Here's the story for you. Back in December, I was out thermal hunting with my buddy. We got on a pair of coyotes at 60 yards, and I started packing a 308 because I got tired of if shooting hogs. If I ran into hogs, I didn't want to lose them and have to waste a bunch of rounds just to drop them. I center punched a coyote through the chest, no exit wound with a 308 at 60 yards. I was like, no way. Get out of
I
here.
mean, bullets do funny things, man. And that's a thing that I think on the 22 Creed's been interesting. And the podcast we did with Hornady, I think we put it out a couple of weeks ago. It's interesting because we were talking about like RPMs. And,
Hmm.
and, and I'm a firm believer of like RPMs may get overlooked when it turns to killing powder, right? So you've got, a bullet that's 20 Creedmoor's going 310,000 RPM, coming out of the muzzle. And so I think it just creates so much vacuum, so much trauma that it outkills how big the bullet is.
Mm.
And I think you see a lot of that. And that's why I think you also get some, small holes, big holes. Like it's highly variable, but I can tell you that you get dead, which a lot of times is kind of what you're going for.
I mean, I don't want to have to trail my animals into the woods, right?
Yeah,
Drop them.
exactly.
Do you find yourself shooting high shoulder
Oh
or
yeah,
like where are you aiming at specifically with this
dude.
bullet most of the time?
We are high shoulder, and what's funny is you go ask my son, and anytime that we have to go look for somebody's deer or anything at the ranch, like he'll literally be like, "Dad, didn't shoot him in the shoulder." Like he like it's like that's like what we're like. Our kind of thing is like we can get. Good. We built some guns for a long range shooting school. I don't know, man. This has been probably 4 years back. A group out of Alabama, and they did a deal, but I thought it was cool. We took a box about the thickness of a deer and put it out at 1,000 yards,
Yeah.
and doped up with a 6.5 Creedmoor and shot through it. And you could kind of see how that bullet was entering, more at this angle at 1,000 yards. And so you start really thinking about like, what does exit look like at distance when you're doing long range?
Mm.
And so you start airing more and more high shoulder just naturally because that bullet's coming in more. And you don't want to,
yeah.
yeah, it's coming in more like this, and you don't want to exit like in front and blow on the brisket. So you want to kind of exit, a little bit higher. So you start kind of doing that high shoulder thing. And honestly, man, I think if you hit that nervous system, it just, I don't know, man, it seems to just plant everything there, and you just don't have a lot of issues.
Right. Right. We're getting some good questions starting to roll in.
Yeah, I
I
see
want to I
that.
want to make sure that I get to these.
It distracted me there. I was trying to answer and read at the same time, right?
Hey, let me host this podcast.
They go through
please.
so fast.
All right. Pew Pew Tony, any chassis options coming out for the 22 Creedmoor?
Man, from Horizon, that is something that we are listening about. We don't have any right now. 2024. We want to do something a little bit different. A lot of times, 2024 people put out their products, like their new stuff in August for the buy group shows. I mean, you don't really see it as a consumer until much later. And so, kind of our internal goal is that July, to start doing July 4th product launches. I mean, that feels very American, and
Oh yeah, like let's
and
go, baby.
and it's in front of the normal hunting seasons. So you got time to think about it, but right now, no. partially because kind of like, talking about Horizon, want to do things counterculture. If we do a chassis, I want to do something different, whether that's carbon, whether that's made in house, whether that's made out of something that's not carbon or aluminum. I don't want to just buy a carbon chassis off the shelf if I can keep from it and put a barrel action in it.
Yeah, that makes sense. I like that. Yeah, you would think with the type of caliber that you're pushing, more people would want it in a chassis gun.
Yeah, it depends. It's interesting. Like, we're seeing more and more of our lighter stuff, even in the 22 Creedmoor, surprises me. A lot of I expected a lot of the Predator guys to want a little more weight, tripod type stuff, but we're actually seeing a lot of lighter guns.
Maybe because people, so I'm a school teacher by trade. I didn't know if you know this or not about me, Derek. But, the term cross trainer or cross training completely lost, right? That died in the 90s when Bo Jackson stopped playing every single sport known to man, right? So you have all these kids that, I'm a basketball player or I'm a football player. Like they pick their lane at a young age and they go for it. And I just got done giving a bear hunting seminar out at the Western Hunting Expo in Salt Lake City. And I talk about bear hunting as a cross trainer for other animals. I've killed turkeys, I've killed deer in my bear locations because I'm out in the field. I'm getting to see more things, making mental notes, all sorts of stuff. Your 22 Creedmoor is almost like that cross trainer for like, I don't know, what caliber do we want to go with? Like the kind of jack of all trades, hopefully ace of a few at the same time, right?
Exactly.
It's kind of,
and that's what we've always said about the 6.5. People always dog the 6.5, and the way that we always pitched it was, it's like you said, it's not the prettiest in any one caliber, but by gosh, it's top three in a lot of them.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And so the 22 just puts a little more juice on it in certain areas and kind of gets it in top one or two in a couple different spots. So.
I like that. Sam Singleton says, "What's the heaviest grain weight y'all have tested in your 1-8 twist rifles? I'm wanting to push 80 plus grain bullets."
Yeah, we've shot some 90s in there. Now, the kicker is going to be a lot of it depends on your barrel length, right? So, and not to cross promote something, but the very first podcast that we did with Jaden and Seth from Hornady on our 22 Creedmoor YouTube, you can go watch that. We talk a lot about figuring out essentially RPMs and like the spin stability on a projectile and how much barrel length affects that. So, if you're going to shoot a longer barrel and an 8 twist, no problems with the 90s. For us, you got to think as a Predator guy, we were really trying to hit that sweet spot and grab more velocity. I do think personally, I think from the guns that I've shot, I actually like the 88 better. I thought the 88s grouped a little bit better than the 90s did for me. But it's that gun, that barrel length.
Now, what barrel length are you talking about for those? Like a 22 or
we were running 24s on those when we were shooting the 88s early on, 88s and 90s. But in some of this competition stuff, if you're shooting 90s, I'm assuming he's talking 24, 26-inch barrels, heavy barrel type setups. If you're going to try and do a 90, I'm saying this: if you're going to try and do a 90 in sub 20-inch barrel. Excuse me, sorry. A sub 20-inch barrel, I would probably jazz up the twist rate a little bit just to get it stable. But like we talk about, JM ballistics, or Seth talks about a pretty easy calculation. I can't remember off the top of my head, but that you can just make sure that you're stable and you're going to get the best BC. Because most people don't realize if that bullet's not stable. Let's say you run it in that 8 twist and an 18. And you don't go fast enough, you won't get the full BC potential. So even though that bullet may be published at a BC of 6, if you're not spinning it fast enough, you may only get an effective BC of 5 and change or 4 and change, right? And so, you need to look at that for sure.
So if someone wanted to call Horizon Firearms and say, hey, I want to stay in the 18-inch barrel category, but I want to push 90s, will you guys put in a higher twist rate for people?
If that's what somebody wanted, yeah, we do. I mean, we still do a full custom line of rifles. I mean, ground up sketch build, rifles. I mean, we just did a consultation with a customer last week that we're doing charcoal, like literally flaming wood to make it look like a coal company they work with. We're making a custom rifle sling to make it look like a crane rig that they run, and running some lignite actually in it to make it look like a real coal mine. So we do all kinds of custom stuff. So changing barrel twist, not a big deal, but we do like that 8 twist, and I've run a lot of stuff in it.
I can only imagine there's so many different like possibilities of like, okay, today we're gonna try this out and see how that goes. Or
it's pretty wild, right? So it's like, why don't we get a pear burner and a $2,000 piece of Turkish walnut and see if we can make it look like coal, right? It's just something different, right?
No doubt. Have you guys heard of 6mm Max? I have not.
I have not, but I'm wondering, like, is he talking about like a 6mm in a PRC case, or I'd like him to comment what case he's talking about on the parent side of that.
I Googled it in the middle of this. It says Sniper's Hide. I went to Sniper's Hide forum, and it was talking about pressure to SAAMI standards, which
Okay.
I'm trying to get deeper
Oh,
into.
70,000.
Yep. I don't know. I can't. It's meant to be ran out of an AR, though. I think is what it looks like.
Oh, okay.
Which,
well, if that's the case,
that
then it's
answers
probably yeah. If it's meant to be running an AR, it's probably. I mean, dude, there's a lot of variation ways to skin a cat. Like it's probably some variant of a 6 arc, if I had to guess, but I have not heard of that phrase.
There you go. Sons
of Liberty are testing. Interesting. I'll have to check that out. Yeah, I don't know what the parent case is on that one. A lot of 6mm work being done though, but personally, I'm starting to get an itch to maybe scratch something in the 25 world.
Ooh, make a comeback. The 25s, man.
Yeah,
go flip.
It's got to be fast.
Yeah,
got to be fast.
Everything's built off the Ackley improved. Like take those and
yeah, play around. I don't know. We like to see what you could get with like a PRC size case with the 25. I think it would be something interesting.
That'd be pretty cool. So what's next on the horizon? Oh, here we go. Comment real quick. I'm in wanting an 18-inch Vantil in a 1 6.5 twist.
6.5 twist, man. Dang, don't run those lightweight bullets in that twist. You'll make bullets come apart. You got to stay with the heavies if you're going to do that.
What's the come apart measurement? Like at what?
It's about 312,000 RPMs. And kind of what's interesting, and I thought this was fascinating to me. We were talking about that at the ranch when we were hunting with the Hornady guys. It's like, what causes that, right? It's really hard to know. Oh, a 350 Legend. It's really hard to know like what actually causes the bullet to come apart, because you got to catch it on film at one moment in time in this one space in time, right? Mm-hmm. And if you've ever shot and seen a bullet come apart, it's the strangest thing to like pull the trigger and it's like poof, and the bullet disintegrate in air. So it's an interesting deal. But one thing they said that they think is actually happening is that at that RPMs, the residual oil that's left in the lead core is boiling, and that boiling core is essentially looking for a place to escape the jacket. And it finds a void in the jacket that was caused by your rifling, shoots it out, and vaporizes the puppy.
Man, that is wild. That is wild. So what, you drop down to maybe a 60 grain in a one?
Yeah, if I was going to run in 6.5, I would try and probably run, 8.5. I'd probably run heavier than that. I mean, that's what I'm assuming he's wanting to do. Is
he wants to run heavy, but I'm just kind of wondering, like based off your testing.
I would, yeah. If you ran like a 60 in that, you'd be going too fast. Your RPMs would be crazy. That's why we picked 8, right? So 8 with an 80 barely keeps you in the SAAMI minimum and keeps that bullet together. So any smaller than that, you run the risk of it coming apart. Any bigger than that, it should be fine. And pending that you don't get pressures as you're trying to get velocity.
Interesting, man. Are you a scientist or a mathematician, or like how do you go about all this stuff?
Just get really nerdy.
Yeah,
and find guys. Find guys that have done it. Like, I mean, honestly, the guy he's commented on here a little bit, Stroud. I've never met anybody that knew more about reloading than he's probably forgotten. Collect the old powder magazine deals, and it's just like you start learning. Like it's just new flavors on a lot of different things, right? So there's always new powders and combinations coming out, but it's it's not fundamentally new, right? So you're just gaining. Everybody's chasing these incremental changes, right? And and sometimes it matters, and sometimes you come up with I don't know. I don't want to bash somebody on a different caliber, but I almost caught myself. I was like, sometimes you come out with a 6.8 Western, and then nobody wants it, right?
Oh, yeah.
But I do like the 6.8. I'm not. I'm not gonna go there.
Being at SHOT Show, I still don't see him really pushing it that much.
Man, we're building one for Guns and Ammo magazine. You may see that sucker in the cover here pretty soon.
Really?
But yeah, man, it's a neat little caliber. The sad thing is there's no brass support, so
Right.
it doesn't have enough support to gain legs, which is why I don't think it'll ever go anywhere. But man, it's a cool little round.
So let me talk about support on brass and bullets and
Mm-hmm.
ammo. You guys have a deal with Hornady. So
Mm-hmm.
Hornady's making the 22 Creedmoor ammo,
Yep.
but they can't. But it's not theirs; it's yours. And then, like, what about like a Nosler or anyone else? Like, at
Yeah.
what point can they start making 22 Creedmoor ammo?
Yeah, now with being SAAMI approved in January, it's game on. Any of the other big guys could, if that's something of interest. I know, I won't mention, but there's been a couple that have reached out to us about that, and then there's also been several large OEM rifle companies reach out,
Mm-hmm.
wanting to do ammo deals and stuff, and you're just being totally honest. And I don't want to get too deep into it. I don't know how much we're allowed to say right now, but it, there's a real nervousness in our industry. Let me pause for a second. So a lot of people may not know, like Texas Ammo is our ammo distribution company, right? So we have Casper Outdoors, we have Horizon Firearms, Iota Outdoors, we own Stiller Actions, we own Texas Ammo. That's all our same group, right? And so we're a pretty big major ammo distributor for Federal, Nozzle, Norma, Hornady, right? So we get a lot of information on that. And a lot of the ammo manufacturers are very, very concerned that we're going to start seeing a major powder shortage in the next 3 to 6 months, and that's going to, we're doing some things on Texas Ammo side where we're beefing up millions of dollars worth of ammo in our distribution network so that we can take care of our dealers. But I mean, it may not happen, may not be as big as we think, but based on what we're hearing, we just want to make sure that everything's taken care of. And so, on the Hornady side of things, we nagged them long enough that Jason finally said, "Hey, you guys really believe in this caliber, and we want to support you." They knew us because we're a pretty major ammo distributing company for them, and we checked a lot of boxes and could commit to a large amount of ammo up front, and really show that we could move it, to get it done. So I think you'll see other companies doing it. I mean, I can name 4 rifle companies that are really, really wanting to do it, but until the ammo stuff starts shaking out, I think it'll be a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. It's interesting because that also is a part of things catching on, right? Is, you know, 6.8 Western and all of a sudden Browning is the only ammo that you can get for it. It makes it challenging that it's not getting that massive grab and pull.
Yeah. Well, and to be fair, like I want everybody to understand, if you're listening to this in 22 Creedmoor, like a lot of people are like, oh, because Horizon's the only one doing it, it'll never work. Hey, we've got over 5 million rounds on order with Hornady, and are working on additional load offerings for, so like we're not, and a lot of people don't realize, I mean, we're a sister company to a 125-year-old 5th generation company that we distribute a lot of stuff. So like this is, distributing ammo is it's not rock. There's nothing new, right?
Yeah.
And again, this caliber means a lot to us, and so I would love more than anything to have millions of rounds that I could support a Ruger, a Bagheera, or whatever to get this thing going. But I can promise you that before we do that, we'll be supporting our dealers and the customers who have supported Horizon first, and then we'll talk about what happens next.
That's pretty awesome. Good job, D.
So,
I like hearing that. I got to give you a shout out. I was talking with Ian Kelbly at Kelbly Rifles.
oh yeah,
Awesome guy. He's been on the podcast. We've chatted with him before.
yeah, nice.
And I was like, Ian, I really want I really wanted a 223 bolt gun. Something about it, I feel like, is just sexy and classic, right? Like, it's that short lever throw,
Oh yeah.
all that, just. And he's like, well, what do you want to use it for? And I'm like, man, I live in Texas, probably hogs, but whitetail and whatever else I can legally shoot with it. He's like, dude, word on the street is 22 Creedmoors would gonna be what you want. I was like, really? He goes, yep. So I was like, all
That's
right,
awesome.
22 Creedmoor. So
That's awesome.
So a little shout out from Kelbly's for you guys.
That's cool,
is that
man. That's cool.
They're pushing your caliber as well, which is
awesome.
Which is a big part of makes the world go around, right?
Absolutely, man. Like I said, it's been fun. We've been watching all the Google trend searches and stuff. You're seeing the 22 Creedmoor and even to some extent the 22 Art really gain. And crazy enough, the 22-250 has had a steady decline since August with the releases of both of those calibers. And so it's interesting,
Interesting. Hey, as a firearm manufacturer and ammo creator and all that, how many calibers do you carry?
Dude, we've got reamers for, dude, I don't even know. I hate to say 70, but I mean, it wouldn't shock me if it was that many. But main calibers in our core lineup, I'm going to say that they're probably somewhere between 7 and 9. That seven and 9 that are relevant, and then obviously, we'll do different variants. Like for example, the 300 Weatherby, because of the way that was designed, we like to mess around with the freeboard, and so I got like 2 or 3 different reamers for that, right? And so when you start looking at ways you can skin that cat, there's a lot of ways to do it. But 7 and 9 that I would say are pretty relevant.
Yeah.
But I told Seth, I was like, dude, I think this year I could have thrown everything away and did nothing but 22 Creedmoor and 7 PRC, and we still couldn't catch up.
Dude, the PRCs are like, they're running away, just wild. I just got my first 7 PRC. Really,
it's impressive, right?
Yeah, really excited about it. So
I tell you, you shoot that and then grab a 300. And I don't want to knock the 300 fans. I mean, it's a lot of knockdown, but I shot a 300 PRC for a customer this weekend. Excuse me, setting up a gun for him to go nil guy hunting, and oh man, it was lightweight. It's just a lot of gun. And he asked me today, he texted me, said, what do you think? I said, great, man. It'll be great for what you want. And he goes, would you have done a 7 PRC instead? And I said, yeah, yeah, I would have. but hey, that Neil guy, man, I don't know. Those 300s will deliver it, though.
Man, that's wild. Yeah, I always hear people say, well, 300 PRC for Alaska moose. I don't know about 7 PRC, though. And I'm like, I don't know. There's 6 one, half dozen another. I mean,
I'll tell you that 7mm, because at high BC, it carries the energy long, long ways. Yeah. And actually, we did again, I hate to keep repping our podcast. We did a podcast where I compared the 6, the 7, and the 300. And you'd be shocked at how at 1,000 yards, how much, just slug for slug that 7 carries with the 300. It would convince you, I think, that the 7's a better way to go.
Gotcha. That's interesting. All right, so this I'm going to answer a question real quick. Pew Pew Tony, you can buy Soul Seeker swag at soulseekersnation.com, or you can go to the link in our Instagram bio and go to our online store and pick up hats, shirts, stickers, all that. So thank you for supporting. I really appreciate that. Here, a question that I got outside of the IG Live when I was talking to some people about everyone. Dude, yeah, Zach, what up, buddy? Glad you could join us.
Is that Zach May?
Yep, sure is.
Hey, there we go.
Yeah. Leading up to this podcast, I was, promoting it, talking to people about it, and they're like, I went on YouTube and started researching, like, has anyone been taking that 22 Creedmoor out to a mile? Is there a whole lot of like that type of testing? Or I'm sure everything's possible, but
man,
is that something that the ELR game is within reach?
I just don't think it personally. I think with that caliber, the 22, you just don't have enough juice for that far. I mean, you're talking about 45 grains worth of powder, right? Where these on the ELR stuff and with Stiller, I mean, if you go look at the King of 2 Mile, our receivers every year are all about I said Gunworks did. There you go. Okay. It just, to me, it seems like it's kind of a funny way to approach that. At 1,000 yards, your drift, your dope is better than what a 6.5 would be. It's comparable to what a 300 Ultra, the actual dial to. He says he's done 1,400. See, as far as I've taken the 22 Creed, personally, it's been 1,000. But I mean, look, there's guys doing it.
Huh. Wild.
So
wild. Well, as much as shooting is super fun, what's even, I think, more awesome is killing animals with the bullet that you're shooting and pushing out. What type of hunt you got coming up this coming summer, fall, all that?
Man, that's an interesting one. I don't know, and that's been hard because we've gotten and I missed a lot of the buy group shows. I mean, you caught me at DSC, which I won't miss DSC. DSC is my absolute favorite show.
Yep.
I'm sad that they're going to Atlanta.
I know, it's so lame.
I know, and I was supposed to go to Mexico on a hunt that same time, so trying to figure out if that's going to happen or not. With a friend for his, he wanted to shoot some birds for his 40th birthday party, and so I don't have as much schedule. I know I got Africa in 2027, but I don't know. It's still early. I had a guy text me from church a couple days ago, asked if he wanted to go shoot blacktail in Alaska, and I don't know. We'll figure that. I tell you what I want to do.
What do you?
I want to go. I want to figure out how to go shoot a wolf with a 22 Creedmoor.
Okay, let's do it. Let's film it as an episode of Soul Seekers.
That's what I want to do. I mean, Seth tells me it was a horrible existence the way that he did it. And I don't want to do it that way.
Did Seth just sit in a blind over bait and just wait?
Yeah,
wait out
for like 10 days and didn't see any.
Yeah, dude.
Man,
I'm going to Idaho.
He says to Idaho.
Yes.
That's what I'm talking about.
So let's talk offside the podcast, because I'm gonna have a wolf tag in pocket, and I got a buddy who traps up there. He's actually the author. I'm going to give him a shout out. The author of the book Turning Feral.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's his journey about getting into the outdoor lifestyle after working in artificial intelligence and military contracts and Department of Defense.
Interesting.
And finally, he moved to Atlanta, Idaho, at the end of a road, and started living the Jeremiah Johnson mountain man life. And
hey, I like me some Idaho. We actually a large portion of Texas ammo is based in Idaho.
Oh yeah, that's right.
We like some northern freedom up in there.
Well, maybe you and I need to hop on a plane and just go do it.
I think that's, from my research, I think if you're going any chance, that's the best chance.
2 years ago, I was on a spring bear hunt in Idaho. I saw a wolf, and it caught me out of the corner of my eye, and I grabbed my gun. It was so weird. All I saw was dog legs underneath like tree branches, and I was like, man, someone's hiking with their dog up here, and all of a sudden I was like, wait, no, that's a wolf. And
oh man,
they're
crazy.
fast. Beautiful.
Oh, he says Burn Magazine talking about doing rock checks. Absolutely, we did that in Montana on a bear hunt. I took my son, and we shot the bear with the 7x6.5, and then we shot rock chucks that whole week. My son shot. Actually, we skimmed one and brought one back. So I've got one in my freezer right now that was thanks to a 22 Creed.
Oh, I love that. I love that. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for tuning in to the episode. I really appreciate it. Derrick, I don't want to cut you off. So if you have anything else
great.
you want to share or pub out,
No, I would. Yeah, there you go. I'm just going to shameless ploy. Check out horizonfirearms.com and 22creedmoor.com for more information. And we'd love if you jump on YouTube, search 22 Creedmoor, and check out our podcast. We've got an On the Horizon podcast there. We'd love to put more information out there, and message us if you got any questions, or be sure and call the customer service guys there at the 979-229-4664. And we love hearing from you. And I appreciate the time, man. I enjoyed it thoroughly.
Dude, it's been a blast. Are you kidding me? I could do this all night, but I mean, it is still a Monday. I got to make sure I keep going for the rest of the week.
Dude, I may steal this idea though. I'm like, you're like working on me here on, now I got to figure out how to do this live thing. It's great.
I'll coach you up afterwards. All right, guys. If anyone in the chat, last call for questions while we got Derrick still on here. So I'm going to give it just a couple minutes, maybe less. We'll see if any article coming out on that Vandal X next month. Okay.
Yeah.
So we got Zach. He's Zach May. Who does he write for?
That's Rifle Shooter.
Rifle Shooter magazine. Oh, here's a question. I went to 22creedmoor.com. I went to go look at a Vandal, and the price changed on me.
It did.
What happened there?
So on the Vandal, we did that as an intro price, $22.22, and so that was kind of our 1 year mark going into the buy group show. So that kind of time period has passed, and so that was always at the very front. You were at the 22 Creedmoor dinner. We sat down and said, look, we're going to do everything that we can possibly do 22 related, right?
Yeah.
So we wanted to do an influencer dinner on 122.24. And we're going to price this thing at $22.22 because that why? Because, right?
Because you can, because this is America. Come on.
Exactly. Oh, this cat's jumping on. Look at that.
Who's your favorite marketer? We all know it's Cat.
Oh, it's always Cat.
It's Cat for sure. Well, brother, thank you so much for hopping on this episode for me.
Absolutely.
I'm really excited. I still plan on coming down to Horizon here this springtime at some point. You and I need to go kill something together.
Let's do it. I know. I'm serious. You tell me when.
Okay. Well, we're going to be planning. I got some contacts up there if we can get on it. I got some friends of mine who've been on the podcast. They actually run a wolf hunting academy out of Idaho. So we'll have to give them a shout, maybe hop up on a group call and really pick their brain.
Okay.
So, all right, guys. Well, thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of the Soul Seekers podcast. I'm Johnny Mack for Derrick Ratliff at Horizon Firearms in 22 Creedmoor. Be blessed, freedom on. Remember that mentorship is conservation, and if you want hunting to last for generations to come, you got to invest in the hearts and lives of other people, because if you're not fanning that flame of conservation in the next generation, who will? Who will? Don't leave it up to somebody else. Be the change you want to see in the world. Be blessed, everybody. I'm Johnny Mack. Freedom on, and stay soulful. If you enjoyed today's podcast and want to support the show, you can always like, share, subscribe, and leave a rating, as it helps us share our mission of mentorship is conservation. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of Soul Seekers Nation as we transform lives through primal adventure. If you want to get more connected with the podcast, check out the Soul Seekers Nation Facebook group, as I look forward to connecting with you on the next episode. So stay tuned and stay soulful.